Psychically, I'm very well endowed.
Hey there, this is Cooper from Telepathic Bunny Comics. What you're about to witness is one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard. It inspires me every time I hear it, and I wanted to share it with you. It's by a man named Luke Stone. His channel is below, and if you want to watch the whole video, you'll find it. This link right here.
As some of you guys know, I was sick last year.
Mm-hmm.
I got sick with COVID, and I went in the ICU. I was intubated for 5.5 weeks, put in an induced coma while they did a number of things to me, tried to keep me alive during that process. There was at one point when my numbers were just so bad, they had the machines up as far as they could go to keep me alive, and my O2 numbers were still dropping, and I was not, my lungs were not translating oxygen into my blood, is basically what was happening. Because of the pneumonia that COVID caused and because of the scarring. COVID will, especially the Delta variant was very bad, very aggressive, but COVID will basically crystallize the outer parts of your lungs and not allow them to expand, is basically what it does. And when it does expand, that crystallization doesn't allow oxygen to pass through the membrane and be absorbed into the blood. That's basically how the lungs work. So they were doing everything they could, and they kind of threw a Hail Mary and did this last thing, and it didn't work. So it wasn't looking very good for me. They didn't expect me to live, and at one point they had to decide not to feed me because nothing was staying down. I kept vomiting, and they were worried about aspiration. If I would have gotten some stomach contents into my lungs, there's no chance I would have survived. And so they kind of broke protocol again, and took me off the feeding tube, or shut off the feeding tube, so I went 12 days without any nutrients in my body. So you can imagine what I looked like after 5.5 weeks of all that kind of stuff. Very skinny, no muscles left, had some severe nerve damage, which I'm still trying to recover from now. I used to be able to play guitar. This is a lot better than it was. I mean, people that have been following me know that at one point it was just stuck like this, but now I can, move it. But during that process, there was one day that was really bad. I mean, my numbers were, it was real touch and go day. And I'm supposing that that's when this happened. Now, when they put me under, I can remember all of my COVID dreams, like all of them. Very vivid, actually. And I got really used to knowing what the COVID dreams were, because they all were the same in one sense. I was trapped. I couldn't move, and I couldn't talk. I had something was in my mouth, causing my jaw to be jacked open, which was reminiscent of what was happening to me in reality. But my mind was playing around with that. I remember the first dream. It was interesting. And I won't get into the dreams, but I remember I was trying to find my wife. And so every dream was that. And then at one point I realized that I'm dreaming. It's like, Luke, you're in the hospital. This is the ICU you've been put under. This is all a dream. Just go to sleep. And when you wake up, something else will be there. I told myself that several times until right towards the end. I had this dream where I was stuck in acrylic, and I was an ornament on the outside of a kind of I would call it like an arcade, but it was, it had bumper cars and things like that. Bumper cars was a theme, like some kind of car was always the theme in it too. It was really weird, and but there's bumper cars and arcade games and clowns and stuff like that, and I was encased in acrylic that made me look like some kind of a clown thing. And I couldn't open my mouth. Acrylic had gotten in my mouth, And so it was like that. And I could see the clock across the street, and I would watch it. And I remember that dream because that dream took a long time. And I watched the clock go down in real time. And I was like, man, this sucks. And at the end of the day, I was like, look, Luke, this is not real. You're dreaming. You are in a coma. And you're sick. You've got COVID. They're taking care of you. Just go to sleep. When you wake up, it'll be different. I went to sleep. I woke up. I was still in the acrylic. I was still in the wall. People were walking by. They thought I was fake. They said, oh, look, its eyes move. And, it was messed up. And again, real time. And I thought at the end of the day, Luke, this is not real. Go to sleep, wake up, it'll be different. The next day, the same thing. Mm. So at that point, I start thinking, maybe this is reality. Maybe this is what's really happening. And I started thinking about the process of what's it going to be like to die in this acrylic. And at what point are they going to realize that that's a real man and they should probably take me out and bury me, right? So I'm thinking about this whole process of what it's going to feel like to starve to death, and how long that's going to take. I mean, my mind was kind of going. And at the end of the day, I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was different. This time I was standing. I wasn't encased in anything. My arms were free. My legs were free. I could talk. I remember cracking my neck and moving my jaw because it just felt so good. And I, stretched my back. And I looked around. It's beautiful. I mean, just beautiful. I was in this field. And at this point, I'm wondering, I'm starting to think, I've known that I was in a dream state this whole time. But there was something different about this one. Not just the fact that I wasn't in this, this place where I couldn't move and I couldn't talk. It was like way different. I looked around and it was just beautiful. The sky was gorgeous. One thing that I'll know is that there were colors there that don't exist here.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that before.
Yeah, other people. It was like right away I caught onto that. And I was barefoot and I started wiggling my toes in the dirt. But there was grass. The grass was up to about my hip. And my fingers would rub across the top of it. It was green, this interesting color of green that we don't have. But I remember thinking it reminded me of the gladiator. When he dies in the grass, he's walking through the grass field. But I kind of remember.
Oh yeah.
I was like, like it kind of reminded me of that. So I just walked a little bit. But I remember the smell. It was real sweet and earthy. It was like a lemongrass smell that was real thick in there. And I thought, wait a second. I'm not supposed to be able to smell my dreams.
No.
I said,
No.
So at this point I go, I'm dead now. Like I remember thinking I'm dead. And it started to cross my mind that, my wife and kids, what are they going to do? But then I wasn't worried about it. Like I wasn't sad. Like I couldn't feel that emotion for some reason. But an overwhelming curiosity took over. And as I'm sitting there thinking and I'm kind of examining where I'm at, I start looking around off to the distance to see, what's going on. And I noticed this cube off in the distance. It looked like a city that was as long as it was tall. So like a cube just sitting over there. And I remember the walls were like a pale green color in the distance. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to, over here are trees, over there are trees. This is a field. It looks like there's a road over here that leads over to that place, and I'm going to go check it out. Just overwhelming curiosity. So I get on the road. I'm walking, and I notice one thing about the road that I think it's made of dirt, but it's so smooth and packed down that it looks and feels paved, or more like a marble floor in a wall, like in a mall. I mean, it was because I'm walking on it barefoot. It was smooth. I can still feel it on my feet. I'm I remember. And so I walked for a while, and I just noticed that the sun was kind of off over here, like this light. I couldn't see the sun in the sky, but there was this light source that was just illuminating everything. Mm-hmm. And I just kept getting mesmerized by the colors and things that were happening. Now, I didn't hear any critters, any birds, anything like that. Didn't hear any of that. But it was just, I remember hearing the wind blow through the grass, and it would have a little whistle every once in a while. It was kind of neat. And so I get closer to the city, and I'm coming up, and it's a square, this big cube. I'm coming up to one of the corners. As I'm coming up to the corner, I notice that there are 3 gates that are about half the size of the wall. So like the wall comes down, there's these giant cube gates. 3 on this side, 3 on that side. And the gates are made of these giant blocks. And they're it's like a pearl material. Like I remember going up and looking at them, and have you ever seen those rocks that when you look into them, it looks like there's a whole universe inside of them? Well,
yeah.
It was like that. You look at it, and the pearl is like this big, deep block. It looked like, it was massive, bigger than my house. And it was real thick, and there was 2 rectangles that were put together, and you couldn't even get a hair down there. They were perfectly manufactured to fit, perfect in the wall. And so I was checking out one of them, and I was just staring at these veins of pink and blue and gold and this other color that I don't know what it's called was going through there. It was just beautiful. And I got a better look at the walls. Now, it was really weird about the walls. When I'm looking at them, as I got real close, I would look up, and they would just disappear into the vanishing point, into this haze, because it was so tall. And when I looked down the side, the wall just went, and it just felt like it curved off into forever because it was so big. And I remember I was like, wow, that's really, I'm like, this is massive. And the walls were like this pale green with little bits of amber, little veins of amber going through it. Like this really thick walls. And it was it wasn't like ornate weird either. It was very sleek and intentional. And there was like lettering carved out above the gates. I couldn't read it. I didn't know what it said. It was like some weird alien language to me, But I remember at the bottom of the wall, there were these giant blocks that were, I don't know. I mean, they were so big.
Were the gates like opal? Something like opal?
Like a pearl, like a weird
Okay.
pearlescent. They were deep, like they were so thick. I mean, but yeah, it's like this weird, so like some off-white, and those colors just like look like it just, The best I can describe it is like you've seen like the inside of a clamshell that has that kind of like pearl effect to it. It's like that, but deep, like with dimension.
Okay.
And other colors. It was really pretty. And I mean, it was just like the way the light caught it, it was, wow, just tremendous.
Wow.
And at the base of the wall, there were these giant blocks, and they alternated it in 12 different colors. Mm-hmm. So it was like one color, and it just was. But these were massive rocks. I mean, these things were probably easily as big as my house, if not bigger.
Oh.
I mean, these are massive blocks that this city is sitting on. And so I start looking around, and I'm thinking, I'm dead, and this is heaven. I'm like, I know what this is. And I after I get done exploring, and I can smell, the smell has changed. Like, there's still got the lemongrass smell. But on top of that, there's this like honeydew smell, like sweet melon. Mm-hmm. So I'm smelling like sweet melon or bamboo or something with it. And then every once in a while on the air, there'd be this waft of cinnamon bread. And I was like, ooh, that smells good, right?
Yeah.
So I was starting to get,
It is heaven after all.
I mean, I wanted to get to this thing, right? But
and then he found out they were bringing Cinnabon every day. No.
Right. So as I'm experiencing this, I'm thinking to myself, well, this is heaven. And I hear people inside. Mind you, this is a massive wall. Like, I can't see the top. I have no idea how deep this is. It is massive. But I can hear people inside. And it is laughter and it is noise. It sounds like there's a party in there. Right? So here I am, pastor, theology student. You know, I'm thinking this is heaven. That's my party. I can't get in. So I move from one gate to the next. I'm trying to find one that's open. And I'm thinking, am I going to have to walk around this whole thing to get in here? Right? Because I hear that. But there's something else that I hear, and I want to make note of this because I think it's important. I heard a melody on the air. You know, like in a small town, when you hear the church bells ringing across town, you can hear it on the air, like in the distance. You know it's there.
Right.
You know it's coming from somewhere. That's what I heard. I heard this melody that was rotating. It was always different, but the words were always the same. And they were singing, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." And then they would repeat the line in a new melody. And then they would repeat the line in a new melody. And then they would repeat the line in a new melody. Never repeating the same melody, but always repeating the same words. And it was beautiful. And I listened for a long time because I could hear it just over the noise inside. And finally, something happened that caught my attention. This whole time, this bright light that illuminates everything is kind of behind me and over my shoulders. And so it's illuminating everything. And so, but I get this sense that somebody is looking at me. And so I turn around. And about 30 yards away, there's a small little hill. So there's this little road that leads away. There's a couple of roads that lead away. There's a lot of different little places where you can go and take hikes and explore. This is what it looks like. And I see this little road that goes by this little hill. And on the hill is a tree. It looked like one of those old dogwood trees. And underneath the tree is a guy standing there. Now, it's funny, and I laughed at this, okay? I laughed. Because I'm an irreverent person, I guess. But I thought this was funny. So I see the guy, and this light is coming from behind him, kind of like how when you're looking at Belmont right now, and there's that light on the wall.
Yeah.
That light was coming from behind him like that, right? And it blacked out his face because the bright light was so bright. And I couldn't see in front of him, like the front part of him, because it was all shadowed out because of the brightness of the light coming out of there. But I saw that, and I laughed because it reminded me of those old pictures of Jesus that always had that little circle of light around his head. And I was like, that's funny. So as I'm chuckling, I noticed something about him. He's wearing these clothes, and they're really pretty and ornate, but not like gaudy. It's a mix between what like Indian people would wear to like a wedding or something, to a special occasion, and what African people would wear. You know, where there's pants, but there's like this long robe thing on the outside, and it's got decoration, but the whole thing was white with the exception of these like decorative threads of gold that were in the garment. And the front was darked out, but I could see the light dancing off the gold in the garment on his silhouette. It was really cool. And I'm looking at it, and I don't know who this is. You know, I'm not sure until he speaks. And as I'm looking at him, you know, I have this little chuckle going. Because I'm like, and then he says, "Luke, just keep walking." And as soon as I heard his voice, I knew who it was. I knew exactly who it was. And then I started to think, like, I had all these internal thoughts. And I thought to myself, well, I'm dead. This is heaven. It's closed. I can't get in. That's Jesus. I know his voice. That's Jesus. And he just told me to keep walking. I'm being rejected. So my first thought was, oh, hell no. This cannot be my eternity. I am not going. You cannot make me go. That's all I'm thinking. I do not want to go. And I started thinking, what did I do? What did I do? And then all of a sudden, this it felt like guilt just hit me. It was like, what have you not done? Like, of course I don't deserve this, is what kind of hit my mind. And I am about to lose it. I mean, there are tears rolling down my face. I'm snotting. I can't think. I can't breathe. I'm starting to hyperventilate. I'm about to fall out because the reality of the fact that I'm dead, I'm never going to see my family again. This is heaven, and I'm being rejected, hit. And I was devastated. And then I heard something. It felt like the Holy Spirit speaking to me. Which, if you're a Christian and you pray, you have a relationship with Jesus, you know what that feels like, what that sounds like. And this was the first instance that I realized I wasn't dead yet. Because the Holy Spirit's not going to speak to me if I'm dead. And I remember there was a verse that came to mind, and it spoke, and it said, "My sheep know my voice, and they will follow no other." And I started to try to catch my breath, and it said it again, but it changed one of the words. It said, "My children know my voice, and they will follow no other." And then logic hit. And I was like, okay, if I know his voice, then that means I'm his sheep, I'm his child. He's not rejecting me. I need to find out what he's trying to say to me. So I start to compose myself. I'm trying to pull it together. I'm pulling it, I've got snot bubbles. I mean, I'm a mess, guys. I mean, this is as real as I'm sitting here talking to you right now, more so, because there's not a screen between us. This is right in front of me, and I'm seeing it. And so I'm trying to pull myself together, and I'm trying to say, "Excuse me," but I can't get the words out because I can't breathe. Like, I'm just trying to say it. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm getting emotional because it was a rough moment for me. But it was like he heard me. I didn't have to say it. He heard me. And his tone changed. And his pacing changed. And he slowed down. He said, "Luke, just keep." And he pauses for, it feels like too long. And his voice lowers. And he says, "Walking." But when he does, his voice changes and there's this power. And it's like, it felt like a subwoofer sending a bass wave through. And when the word hit, it surrounded me, and all of the guilt went away. All of the shame went away. But this overwhelming knowledge that this person standing in front of me has a power that I don't understand. And I remembered that it said in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And that he made everything, and everything was made through him and by him. Without him, nothing was made. So that means Jesus was the one that made everything. And it says in the very beginning in Genesis,
he spoke it into existence.
Spoke it into existence, exactly. And so it hit in my mind, in my heart, and I understood that he speaks gently because he has to. Because he has the power to destroy me if he doesn't speak gently. He just let me feel a little bit of what he had.
Give you a sample.
So I would understand that he's not here to kill me, to send me to eternal death. That it was something else. And so I said, okay. In my head, still couldn't speak. At this point, I am total reverence. I'm like, I know who this is. I don't deserve to be here. This is like being in the presence of I'm like, okay, I'll do whatever you say. And I just kept walking. But I chose the path that walked closest to him because I'm still very curious. And I want to see this guy. I want to get a closer look at the guy I preach about every week, right?
Right.
So I start walking by, and I go, and it's about 15 to 20 feet away from me when I pass him. Now, he doesn't change his stance. He keeps looking at the city. But his head follows me. And he's just watching, and his arms are behind his back. He's like kind of folded his hands behind his back. And he's got this stance like, it's not cocky or arrogant. It's authoritative. Like but he's very casual in his authority. Like, there's no doubt, like, he knows who he is. And he's not worried about anything. That kind of authority. It was very interesting. And as I'm walking by, I keep my eyes down and I'm just watching my feet walk on the road. And I keep kind of poking up like this shy little kid. And finally I get to the point to where I'm closest to him and I can see as he turns his head, I can see. Now this side's still blacked out because the light is just shining. But the side of his face, the right side of his face gets flooded with light. And I look up and I notice a few things about him. Number one, he's got dark skin. Like, not like black person dark, but dark. Like Jewish dark, Middle Eastern dark. And his beard is white and close cropped. A little cleaner than Bunny's beard. A little cleaner than that.
Mm-hmm.
But white. And his hair is white with it looks like little bits of pepper in it, but it's curly and short and curly. But one thing I noticed was the light hit his eyes, and the eye's brown. He's got brown eyes, but there's little flecks of amber, and when the light hit it, it danced like fire, and I found myself mesmerized by what it looked like because it looked supernatural. It didn't look like anything here. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. And I remembered this later as I'm laying in the hospital, thinking about what had happened and how no one's going to believe this story. There's no way I'm telling this story. It took months before I decided to tell the story. So I'm like, no one's going to believe this crap. They're going to think it's a COVID dream, that it's the drugs. Like, I'm not speaking a word of this. And the first time I told this story was to a guy at our church when he came in to visit me. I just had to tell somebody. And I could barely talk. But I was like, I just have to tell someone what happened. And so I told him the story. Beth was upset that I didn't tell her first. But I don't.
Have you tried to draw any of this stuff?
No,
like
not
anything
yet.
you've seen?
I've thought about it. It's the color. That's what's bothering me. That I want to color it, but there's a color that's missing that I can't.
Well,
so I'll have to.
I want to see the gate or something. It doesn't matter doesn't have to be in color. Just like what it looks like.
Yeah, I can do pencil and ink on it, or pencil sketch. But so as I walked by, I noticed that, and I thought later, the scripture says that there's fire in his eyes, and I was like, that's what it means. It's that specks of amber, they fire off, So anyway, he told me to keep walking. I was like, I'm keeping walking. I'm not. He didn't say anything else to me. Just those 4 words, repeated it one time. And so I'd keep walking down this path. This path gets more narrow, and it gets further away, and it starts to get dark, and then it gets darker, and I'm starting to walk through trees, and it gets darker, and the path gets more narrow and a little more difficult, and finally I'm to this point to where it's completely pitch black. I can't see anything. Can't even see my hand in front of my face, and I'm like, I'm stuck. I find this soft rock. There's a rock with like moss on it. I find this rock. I keep hanging out on that, and then just trying to explore and find things. But I don't want to go too far because I want to make sure I've got this rock to go back to, because it's the only thing that I have reference for. And finally, I'm like, God, you said keep walking, and I don't know where to go. I can't see anything. A little help here. I'm like, give me something to follow, something at all. If not light, if not vision, a sound. And about that time, I heard something. I heard a woman singing a song that I recognized. It was a song called I Still Believe by Jeremy Camp. And so she's singing the song, and I remember where it says, and I still believe in your faithfulness, all this, and I still believe in your holy word, and all that. And so I hear it, and I start to follow it. And I realize the song is going to end soon, so I start to run. As I'm running, I'm feeling leaves smack me in the face, so I keep my hands up just to, keep whatever's coming not smack me right in the schnoz, because I don't want that to happen. I'd rather catch it, first. And in case I fall, I'll go down. I'm thinking all this stuff, I'm making logical decisions and all that kind of stuff. And so finally I run and I hear the sound and I run past it. I'm like, oh crap, where was that? So I turn around and I run back to where it's loudest, and then I run past that because there's nothing there. Finally I do this a couple times, and I'm right where the sound is, and then I yell. I'm like, for crying out loud. Where is it? I'm like, I'm mad. I'm like, you said to keep walking. I'm walking. I'm running in the dark. Here's the sound. Where is it at? About that time, a big flash of light, and everything is bright white. And my eyes start to focus, and it fades, and I'm looking up at a light in a hospital ceiling, a hospital room. And I look over and I see these machines. And I look down and I see these little skinny legs that look like bones wrapped in chicken skin. And I look down and I think my hands, and I try to move. My left hand doesn't move. My right hand, my little fingers will twitch. And I think, oh man, this is gonna suck. I said, how long was I out? But I still hear the singing. And I look over, and there's the nurse singing, I Still Believe. They put a little radio in there because my wife told them that I liked worship music. And the song's playing on the radio.
Is that when you woke up without a beard?
Yeah.
They shaved it?
Yeah. So she looks over. She actually finally turns around. She was doing something. She goes, well, welcome back, Mr. Stone. And a few hours later, my daughter came in. And I saw her. And she did one of those things where we always do that game. We do and so she asks her outside the door getting ready. Putting on her mask and all that kind of stuff. And I look at her and she does the little hand thing. And I remember thinking, I'm so glad to see you. It was wild, man. I'm telling you, it was crazy. But I can't wait to go back. But I'm really happy that I'm here.